Hey there, we're back, and I've finally got all of the pool plaster chipped out. As you can see, it was a lot of work, just under 4,000 pounds of plaster. Today I'm going to talk about the 5 types of pool leaks you might have in a swimming pool. I had a few of them in my pool, and so if you want to have someone come out to find them for you or detect them, you get a pool leak detector. It's going to cost you a few $100, and so I thought maybe I can save someone some money doing a little bit of DIY leak detection for yourself. So first one is the Skimmer, and a couple of the guys that I actually had 3 pool leak companies coming out, and a couple of them told me this was the primary most common source of leaks, and that you can see this Skimmer. Essentially, it's a plastic shell and it's got a bunch of pipes and things down there, but the joint between the plastic skimmer and the pool shell is a really common place of leaks. And so I have 2 skimmers, one here and one across the way there, but we had both skimmers leaking. And so what usually happens is the joint between the plaster and the shell opens up or breaks over time, water leaks out into the surrounding soil, and causes some damage. You can kind of see this is, if you followed my video where I had all the repair of the pool deck sinking and lifting it back up, this is the skimmer closest to where all that damage happened. And so we live on a hill, or the pool is built on a hill in our backyard. You can kind of see the surrounding soil kind of slopes downward, and so I am on a big hill right here, and it drops down, you know, a little over 10, maybe 12 feet. And so that water leaking out of this skimmer could potentially cause a lot of damage. And I think that's actually what happened, is that all of the damage seems to be worse over here. And so water getting in that joint over time for many years can cause soil instability and just lack of support under the shell holding it up. And so what you want to do is grind out all of the joint area. A lot of companies will try and put some epoxy, some underwater epoxy there. And they did actually do that for me. That failed fairly quickly within a few months, or by the next summer. It was already close to leaking again. So the pool putty doesn't work all that well in really thin sections. If you can find a way to get a good chunk of the material out and pack it full of putty, that might work. But really, if you can do that, what you want to do is grind out all the joint around it and then pack it with hydraulic cement, and then put some pool plaster patch. The next type of leak you might find is in a return fitting or any other protrusion into the pool where that's part of the plumbing. So when I had this plaster on, I had plaster actually going and covering up this fitting so that I couldn't unscrew it to close the pool for the winter. So when I tried to remove this, in order to remove that, I had to grind away some of the plaster just to be able to unscrew it. And what I found is that it looked a little bit like there might be a little holes or pinholes around it. And so when I actually removed all the plaster, getting ready to replaster the entire pool, I noticed, hey, there's a giant hole right near the top of that fitting, and it looks hollow back there. So I'm going to have to pack some hydraulic cement in there. And that's different than a pool plumbing leak. So a plumbing leak is what's actually a leak in the pipes that go from the pump to your pool returns. You could also have a plumbing leak between the skimmer and the pool pump, but that's not as common unless, for example, a tree was planted right over your pipes and the roots grew and broke it. The issue you'll find out is that an easy way to detect whether there's a plumbing leak on the pressure side of the pool system is that when the pool pump is on, you're losing a lot more water than when the pool pump is off. Because when it's under pressure, whatever crack is in this pipe between here and the pump, water is escaping through that crack rather than getting sent back into the pool. So that's a real easy indicator of that you might have a pressure side pool leak. So to find out if you've got a plumbing leak between the skimmer and the pump, what you can check is that when that happens, air will be getting sucked into the system somewhere between your skimmer and your pool pump. And so what you can do is look for leaks in the pool pump. There's usually a little clear window on top. If you're getting a lot of air bubbles in there and it's building up over time when the pump is running, that's a good indication that you have a suction side air leak, and that could be caused by a leak between the pipe in the skimmer and the pump. But it's not going to be a cause of the leak between the skimmer joint and the pool shell, like I discussed at the very first one. All right, and this other type of leak is in other fittings that are not plumbing. So this is a light fixture. The two spots where you can get a leak is between the fixture housing and the pool shell, just like the skimmer. This one I've got some deteriorating stuff under here, so that might have to be addressed. The other thing to look out for is this fitting. Because it's a light, it has a wire going from the light back out to a spot on the pool deck. And that pipe, if it's open or breaks, or the joint between the pipe and the fixture leaks, you can get a pool leak, you can get a water leak there. And so that's something you can watch out for. Another spot you might find it is that the main drain is very similar to the pool return, although technically it's a suction side, so it's a skimmer. But if you are getting air bubbles in your pump window or the viewing window or the basket, you could have an air leak between drain and the pump. The problem with the main drain leak is that getting to the pipe is really, really difficult if it's under 10 feet of concrete. And so a lot of people recommend just abandoning the drain in that case. You can't really abandon it. I don't mean ignore it by abandoning it. I mean you have to drain the pool, cover the pipe, seal it. Sometimes they'll fill it with concrete, or they'll cut out the drain, fill it with concrete, and patch things back up. You don't really need a drain all that much. A lot of pools don't even have them anymore. They're handy for, I guess, circulation in really deep pools. It kind of helps suck some of the colder water out, so it gets heated if you have solar heating, that kind of thing. So, but not totally necessary. If I was to weigh jackhammering out a huge portion of my pool versus getting rid of the drain, I think the drain would get tossed nearly every time. So that brings us to the final spot where you might find a leak. And if you watched a couple of my other videos, you can get a crack in the pool shell itself. Where I have one here, and then one that ran all the way along there. And so the one thing I left this crack or this leak source out until the other stuff was talked about is that this kind of leak can be caused by the other kinds of leaks. And I mean by that, if you've got water leaking out of a skimmer and saturating the soil all around the pool that is supporting your structure, that structure over time is going to lose all the support from the dirt and the soil that's under it. And so that structure can start to sink or shift and cause cracks in the pool. And so a lot of companies will suggest just grinding out the crack and filling it with either epoxy or some other cement. The trouble with that is that if you still have a leak in one of the skimmer or light or return and the water is still getting into the soil, the structure is still going to be moving. And so that crack is just going to either open up, or a new one is going to crack right alongside or in another spot. And so it's totally pointless to fix this crack until you've made sure that there are no cracks like this and that kind of stuff. And so, in fact, one example here in one of my other videos, there's this huge area of concrete around this one return, and I'm convinced that all the damage that was caused by that was caused by a leak in the joint between the shell and this one fitting. There was water getting back there, destroying the concrete over many, many years, and also eroding the soil out. Along with that skimmer, just kind of saturated all the soil around here. So that's a huge thing to note before you go fixing cracks in the shells. You want to make sure that there's no other leaks in any other areas. And so one of the video I did where this was fixed, the other alternative to epoxy and just cement is installing metal staples all along the crack. The staples that I used were from Torque Lock. They're supposed to be pretty good. I'll have to check the exact time, but the pool's been empty several months and I have not seen any crack open up or anything shift or move since that was installed. The alternative I see other people do is installing rebar staples, and that's just bent rebar where they drill some holes and push the rebar in, and then they epoxy it or glue it in to keep the structure from moving and opening the crack back up. That's an alternative too. It's probably a lot cheaper than the staples I installed, but the staples say they have or the maker of the staples says they have a pretty good success rate. So upwards of 95%. So those are the 5 common leak points in a swimming pool. Hopefully that can save you a few $100 in having someone come out and point those out to you. Usually those guys won't fix any of the cracks. They'll just tell you there's a crack, and in some cases they'll install some underwater marine epoxy in a crack if it's easy to get to. But they'll scuba dive, down in the water, and they'll highlight, and they even will patch a little bit of the epoxy if there's a crack in the shell that they have found. Those don't last. That solution doesn't last very long. Mine opened up within a few months. It's just, I don't think it can handle any kind of movement in the shell, and also it just doesn't seem to hold up underwater very well. Next video is going to be about the replastering process itself. I've got someone lined up. I think I'm 90% confident that this person is going to work out. But the video is going to be about things you need to do to prepare the plaster or prepare the pool shell for replastering. Some of the things you might want to look out if you do hire someone to do it. Some of the things you want to look out for to make sure you get a good result that maybe you can check and make sure they didn't miss. The other thing, there's some details about what if you wanted to DIY replaster the pool, and so that's possible. I've seen a few videos where people do it, but there are some serious, huge considerations to make sure you understand before you try and do that. And so take a look out for that video if you want to see it. Click like and subscribe, and we'll see you later.